everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Contact Center Show. I'm your host, Justin Robbins, and we are in store for a treat today. Michelle, I'm not even going to think about how many years ago I met you for the very first time. All that I know is that throughout my time in and around contact centers, there is one person who has been an incredible voice in what's going on with work from home way before it was ever the in thing to do. And that person is Michelle Rowan, president of the Work From Home Alliance. She's my guest for today. We're going to have a conversation about a whole bunch of things. So let's jump in. Michelle, thanks for joining me. Good to be with you again.
Yes, it's so good to see you, and I'm really happy to be here, Justin.
Now, so I said it in kind of the intro there that it's like you were one of the people that I know was talking about work from home, how to do it well, what we need to be thinking about way before organizations kind of it became the mainstream. I don't know that I've ever asked you this question, but what's your origin story? How did you get started working in contact centers and kind of what led to the formation of the Work From Home Alliance?
Okay. My first contact center role was actually with a BPO. What a place to start, huh? I mean, I jumped right in. I was actually in Memphis, Tennessee, and my background was in HR. So that's where I started with this BPO. High volume recruiting, lots of employee relations stuff happening all the time. And then I moved over to Hilton Hotels from that BPO into the reservations division. And I was there for a total of 12 years. And that's where I got my first experience with work from home. I was actually working in Europe at the time, looking after our international reservation offices in Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Africa. And the U.S. operation had just vetted the technology for remote working, and we had a big need in Europe because we were struggling to keep up with native language staffing or highly fluent language staffing. We were really having a hard time. So Hilton was opening those hotels in all these different countries, and we in the reservations division were really struggling to keep up. So we decided to adopt the work from home model. We took the technology from the U.S. and then, customize the working model to represent the regulatory environment in the UK and the culture. And it worked. It solved our problem there, and that was a lot of fun to be part of that. And then I came back to the U.S. after 5 years, and we were scaling the work from home model in the U.S. at that time. By this time, it was 2008 or 9, and we were in the middle of that ugly recession. And we had a ton of employees that weren't busy because people weren't spending money on hotels. And we either were going to have to lay off literally hundreds of people or find a different kind of solution to hang on to our employees. So we opted to scale the work from home model and released a bunch of our real estate. I led that expansion kind of in real time. The train was leaving the station and we had to figure out how to do this on scale. Yeah, so that's where I got my experience, and I fell in love with the business model. I saw that it made many employees happy and saved a lot of employees money, and it saved the company a ton of money. And I just figured that there was a way to bounce out on my own and share that good cheer with other organizations. So that's what I did, and that's what brings us here today.
I love it. And you reminded me that one bit of shared background for us is working in reservations contact centers. I was at the Hershey Entertainment Resorts contact center during that same period of time. And now I'm going back through my head. I'm like, I think that you and I met through one of the ICMI conferences, but I was like, maybe we met through IR, which was, for people who aren't going to know, the International Association of Reservations Executives.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's something that I probably knew, but you've just refreshed me on it. And so cool how here you were faced with a problem and you're like, we've got an idea, let's see if it works. And now it's been something that's, really kind of gone on in organizations. What I do think is interesting though, and you're going to kind of check my data on this one, because my source is just anecdotal conversations with people I know. It feels to me like, we had this big influx in organizations that were not just tolerant, but excited and interested in having their workforce go and work from home. But it feels like I'm hearing more and more conversations or seeing in the news where the pendulum is swinging back to an era of return to office policies. I'm just curious, like, what's your take on things? And more importantly, as you're talking to organizations that are keeping work from home as a core part of their model, why are they doing it?
Okay. Well, I think this story, it's a pretty simple one. I mean, the pandemic forced everyone home. Everyone had to work from home. And now that the health emergency is behind us, executives have choice again. So many executives have opted to reap the benefits of lower operating costs, expanded labor pools, biggest talent pools, and heightened employee satisfaction by maintaining work from home as an option, as one of the workplaces where people can work. Some executives can't get the cost savings out of their business because they're locked into capital commitments, and they are doing return to office. That's what I say. And then there are some executives that simply prefer to be in the office themselves for whatever reason, and they are lonely without their troops. Those guys want their troops to come back to the office. So I think we have a mix of all those dynamics going on right now. But for the most part, in the contact center environment, because we sit on so much expensive real estate and because we have huge populations of people that make not a lot of money for the most part, a lot of those people really want to be at home. And our technology worked so well during the pandemic because of our center view applications, our visibility of production, our ACDs. I mean, we know everything about our employees when they're on the phones, off the phones, on hold, in whatever status. It doesn't matter where they sit, right? We've been using those tools for the last 2 decades. So during the pandemic, that was all proven out that in the contact center environment, productivity, visibility was never in question. And on the enterprise side of the business, there's more question there about how productive people really are. There's not in the contact center environment. So I think that's why it's much more about choice now and about those capital commitments that many companies are tethered to. We might see more of a shift to work from home as the model continues to mature and as those capital commitments come up for renewal or opt-outs.
I think that's a really valuable observation that you made there, Michelle, and I agree with you. And that kind of when you start to probe into, so talk to me about why. It seemed like you were excited about this, and now you're feels like reversing course. And often you're hearing that, right? Either we've got a senior executive that for whatever level of comfort or familiarity or not wanting to be the only one in the office, they're bringing them in. Or, hey, we signed this real estate agreement in, January of 2020, and we're locked into this thing for the long haul, so we've got to find a way to make it viable. That said, I think there are plenty of organizations, and you know this, you've done this, and you're hearing people who are doing it every single day, who they right now are considering transitioning. They're in that place where they can say, hey, more of our workforce or all of our workforce can move to a work from home model. What would you say are some of the most important factors or considerations for businesses who are in that place and they're thinking, hey, we want to go to work from home. How do we do it well?
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to start with this premise that ideally the best solution to me to attract and retain the best talent out there is to give people as many options as we can in terms of where they will work. Home is an option, office is an option, both is an option, or a third place is an option, like a pop-up location, WeWork, etc., those sorts of things. So to drill down a little further on key factors that organizations maybe should consider seriously when transitioning more people to work from home, there's a couple of them. Number one, is your organization prepared to hire or move people home that want to be there? In other words, forcing people is not going to work. I don't care which box you're trying to put them in. So we really need to ask ourselves that question first. Are we willing to hire people to work from home? And that means not work in the office for 6 months. That means work from home. Are we willing to hire people to work in the office and be transparent about what those commitments are and then meet them? and clear around the expectations. Number two, super important, are your leaders prepared to support distributed teams? You know, the tools are different, the cadence is different. It's not going to work if your leaders are not prepared. And number three, are you prepared from a logistical standpoint to manage work from home? It's the equipment and getting equipment to people. It's the technology. Do you have the right technology for meetings and recognition and reward and contests and promotions and virtual learning and performance management? You know, we need to have all that stuff in place.
Yeah, I first off, thank you. I mean, no doubt that you would have kind of very thoughtful and well-rounded perspective on what organizations need to be thinking about here. I want to maybe dig into some of the stuff you mentioned, Michelle, a little bit more. The first one is the role of technology. So let's erase the table stakes operational stuff, like the tools your contact center needs to serve customers. What I'm curious about is some of the stuff you alluded to in terms of connecting the workforce, some of those things. Talk to me about what would you, if I said, Michelle, you're running a contact center again, it's gonna be work from home, what would you consider to be some of the must-have tools for you to be able to effectively engage and connect your work from home team?
Okay, well, let me start with this. Today, most of the work that we do, even in an office environment, in a co-located environment, is digital. We're using technology tools, right? It's not so much supervisors running up and down aisles anymore, doing one-on-one help. There's a little bit of that, not much of it, maybe IT. But largely, when employees need help from their supervisor or the help desk, usually that's a digital reach out today. Learning platforms. I mean, maybe there's some still, exclusively, classroom learning, but not for the most part. We're using technology for a lot of learning today, and a lot of learning, micro learning and recurrent learning is delivered to the desktop, where people are doing that one-on-one. So, for me, when I think about the work environment today, most of the work stuff is getting done using digital tools, even in a co-located environment. The in-person meetings are a bonus, and they are truly a bonus, and they're a blessing, right? When we can actually meet face to face. But the rest of the stuff that you need to work from home, you need to work well, to get smart work done.
Yeah,
Sharing knowledge and experience, team sharing, help desk, learning. I mean, most companies, if they're not using digital tools yet, they're going to be, but most are to some degree already. So it's kind of continuing down that road, really.
absolutely. And you're reinforcing, I think, an important reminder for leaders. Work is work is work, and the tools you need to effectively work, whether it's at your desk in a building or in your desk in your home, right? Those core tools are, relatively unchanged. I even think about, I was a few weeks back on site with an organization, and you had people in multiple conference rooms videoing in to the same meeting, right? It's like even when they were in the same place, they weren't necessarily coming together in person, which, as you mentioned, can be an incredible gift if we use it as such.
Yes.
So I do want to maybe kind of move to a nuance here, though, because so we've got the tools and the processes and all that kind of stuff, but the idea of loneliness, I think, is it goes both ways. It goes to the person who's in the corporate office, and it goes to the person who's sitting at their desk. And even if they're a top performer, I've seen too many examples where agents get disengaged or they kind of lose motivation because they're not having that in-person element. They're not having the right mechanisms to make them feel like what they're doing is valued. Yeah. How are you seeing companies keep their work from home employees engaged and motivated in doing their work?
Okay. It's interesting because I was in another meeting this morning, and we were talking about this very thing. I agree with you that, contact centers, number one, they're high pressure environments, right? The pace is crazy. And probably unlike any other function in an office environment, if you think about it. And I think we forget about this, but how many people do you know that are in customer facing roles 88 to 92% of their scheduled time in an office environment? That's a lot of pressure. It's a lot. So I think we have to keep that in mind, regardless of where people sit. Again, whether they're in office or at home, at hybrid, third space, we need to have viable methods in the contact center environment to take some of that pressure off and to make the workday as interesting and as engaging and as fun as we can because of that pace and because of the monotony of the job. It's highly transactional in nature. So outside of the obvious tools that we use to keep people engaged and motivated, like meetings and updates and town halls, all the stuff that the enterprise side of the business uses, we in the contact center need to do more to break that pace and the monotony. And it is things like amplified recognition and reward. It is things like contests and promotions. None of that stuff is new. We've been doing it forever. In a distributed environment, the tools change. They change to more digital tools. Tools like gamification, okay? Tools like Centrical. Swag shops platforms like Achievers, so people get badges, they're giving badges, they're doing all that stuff with each other. That's the level of engagement and the tools that we need to use when people are more distributed, to me.
It's good. I agree with you, and I think one of the things that I put into practice, because even after I left the contact center, I've still been a part of a distributed team. And for me, recreating water cooler moments, finding opportunities to still just have those drop-ins and have connections, be like, Michelle, you told me before we left work last week that you were going to be doing this over the weekend. I'm curious, how was it? What did they think of it? You know what I mean? Like these types of moments, when someone's not right in front of us, I think we forget or we don't give ourselves permission to have those connection points. So I've worked from home for a while, and again, you and I talk to teams that have teams working from home all the time, and I have a little bit of I don't know that it's a grudge, but I have something that I'm still seeing organizations do a pretty bad job at, Michelle, and I'm curious on your take here. So we spend a lot of effort and energy to recruit and attract and hire our employees.
Yeah.
And where I'm seeing a lot of organizations miss the ball is on that onboarding and training process. Like it feels like it doesn't hit the same when you've got somebody who's either their first day is at home versus coming into an office where it can be more of a, hey, we've been anticipating you, we're excited to have you here. And I'm not talking about sending some like swag, like, hey, excited to have you on the team. Like that stuff's superficial to me. Tell me, like, what do you see organizations who are training and onboarding their work from home or their distributor, their hybrid teams, like what are they doing well? What are you seeing?
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. It's a huge piece of work, onboarding and training, regardless of where you do it, to get that right. Because if you don't get it right, people are starting to leave mentally first, and then emotionally, and then physically they're out the door, right? So it's a huge piece of work, and the lessons that I've learned and that I've seen companies learn and spend a lot of time on is first setting the vision. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Identifying your strategic alternatives, zeroing in and agreeing on the plan, this strategy that's going to fit you best, and then planning that out religiously with many touch points. Because you're right, with onboarding, particularly when people are remote, and there's a gap usually between the time someone accepts a job and the time that they start training. There's a gap, and those people are being hunted, right? And they may continue to hunt themselves. It's two ways. They could continue to look, and also their door is being knocked on digitally by they're being pursued. So it's really important for organizations to begin the excitement the day the job offer is accepted. I think the recruiter or whoever the HR representative or the hiring manager is that is having that conversation is tasked with the first interaction about building excitement because you've got someone face to face. So take advantage of it and start the ball rolling then. But it needs to be very methodical in terms of communicating frequently, probably twice a week. And it's not just an email, it's an invitation to come in and you have to do something. So you're going to watch a video that, for example, to learn about benefits and sign up for them, which is something that typically happens in orientation, right, or onboarding. I'm going to watch a video of another agent named Justin who's telling me about the benefits package, not the HR person. I want to hear it in Justin's words, what the benefits package is really about, the goods and the bads, the pros and the cons, and then maybe somebody from HR steps in too, and then I'm going to have an activity to begin that sign-up process. But I love storytelling from reps that are in the roles, quick videos that are, there are messages that go out and say, okay, you're in part 2 this week, and now we're going to talk about scheduling and how that works. Part 3 might be how you get paid and how overtime works, and let the stories come from reps that are in the roles, backed up by the formal forces, if you will. But those scheduled, calendared, interactive touch points, they're going to build excitement, and we need them during that gap period. Again, whether people are coming into the office for training and onboarding or whether they're going to do it digitally, we have to fill that gap and build the excitement. We've done a crappy job at that always.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic even.
Oh, this is such good stuff. So there's a separate episode that we're doing specifically on culture and apathy, and part of the conversation is around how do you set that tone, the right tone from the beginning, because you said it, Michelle, it's like people then start to immediately wonder, like, was this actually the right decision for me? Like, do I like, we undermine ourselves because we don't fill the gap, and they are filling the gap themselves. We are all, like, as humans, we are masters at crafting a narrative inside of our head. And I think, to your point, organizations need to find a way to make sure that we are shaping and influencing from a point of we're anticipating, we're excited, like you belong here, we're ready for you to make a contribution. That stuff can go so far. All right, so I have a couple more questions for you, and I want to be mindful because, like, I could probably talk to you for hours on end on a whole bunch of things, Michelle. But 2 more things I'd love your thoughts on. And the first one is this. As with, every year, month, feels like day or moment, there's new technology, there's trends that are getting hyped up or not. What is the stuff happening right now that's catching your attention, or maybe you seeing as having the most significant impact on work from home contact center operations in the next few years?
Okay. First, and this is going to be a weird one, and again, this is my opinion, but to me, it's super important, and I think we've been falling down in the contact center environment for a long time over this, and it's a powerful knowledge management system that is customizable, user-friendly, based on how employees want to search. Because when employees get stuck, particularly new hires, they're helping customers real time, or maybe it's their own technology that they need help on, but they're helping customers real time, and if they have to put a customer on hold and bang around in a SharePoint file trying to find a string that's in a Slack, that's not going to cut it. If they have to search a Slack channel to find an answer for something, they need to be able to get into a high-power knowledge management system that, based on the way that they prefer to search, they can get an answer really fast. And then, of course, the backup is the other channels. It's contact the help desk. So KMS is super important to me. Everything else that we've talked about, the recognition and reward, contests and promotions. I mean, we do a ton of it. We need to do a ton of it for all the reasons that we talked about. We need to automate it. It's time to invest in gamification platforms because they drive engagement, they drive connection, and they level the playing field in terms of the employee experience, because our leaders are all different in the way that their ability to design and execute and support all those programs, contests and promotions and recognition reward. So your employees can have very different experiences, and gamification platforms help us level that experience. So people have a similar one, not exactly the same, we don't want that, but a similar experience in terms of the quality and the quantity, the frequency of that experience. So those are the big ones to me, and easy to use meeting platforms, really easy learning design platforms. That's another big one too.
Yeah. Oh my God. Michelle, I kid you not. There's like two things that have been rattling around in my head around knowledge management. One, so much so that is a topic that is going to be addressed at a later time. But, as a researcher, this is something that it's been a problem for a while, and I'm deep in the midst of some everybody watching this. I feel bad right now because Michelle and I are going to have a moment here, but like you and I need to talk more about this because
I'd love
this
to.
is a real problem for organizations. So
Yeah,
for those of
let's
you
do it.
watching, like knowledge management, get after it. This is such a valuable tool, not only as you think about automation and efficiency, but enabling your workforce to feel confident and capable in their role.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than like floundering oh my goodness, you got me on a soapbox. I tried to avoid it.
You needed to be on it. That's okay. Your audience needs it.
All right. Last question for you, and this is as wide open as you want it to be. As I mentioned, you're president of Work From Home Alliance. You focus on connecting organizations and working with organizations who are supporting work from home. I'm going to give you a minute at the end of the episode just to talk about how people can learn more and if this is something they want to get tapped into. But my point with saying all this is I know that you get to have so many conversations with organizations who are either thriving or struggling to make a work from home model successful for their contact center. Through those conversations, is there a lesson, or is there kind of like something that jumps out that it's like, hey, if you're in this place right now and you're doing it and you feel it's not working, or you want to do it and you want to do it right, what's one piece of advice that you, Michelle Rowan, would give to that person?
Okay, my one piece of advice. Don't wait until stuff breaks to update and refresh your workflows and your guidelines and your technologies if you're going to deploy work from home or expand it or scale it. Review all that stuff up front. I mean, if you've got stuff, and I see a lot of companies that say, well, we're gonna transition our in-office workflows and guidelines and policies and business processes and all that stuff, and we'll just roll it out, see what sticks, see how it works. Don't do that, because every time something breaks, you're probably losing another employee, at least one. You're much better off to break up the work and have some teams review those workflows and those policies and those guidelines and those technologies. It doesn't take a lot of time. A couple months on a project team of some people meeting once a week and putting their heads down, and that way you can refresh and put stuff out there that makes sense instead of confusing employees and disappointing them, frankly.
Yeah.
When stuff fails.
So good. All right, Michelle, for people who want to learn more about Work From Home Alliance, can you give us a quick overview of who's Work From Home Alliance for and how can people learn more?
Yeah, it's designed specifically for leaders who want to learn from others about their colleagues in other industries and same industries about their experiences, their wins and their fails in hybrid work and remote work. Our core offering is monthly virtual meetings. They're 90-minute sessions for member organizations who come in, and I set up topics and guest speakers every month. And people come in to share their insights and experiences in a safe environment. It's a non-vendor, no sales environment. And if you want to give it a test drive, you can join a meeting for $125 and for a 90-minute session and see how it feels to you.
Awesome.
Check it out on wfhalliance.com.
So good, everyone. I've been chatting with Michelle Rowan, president of Work From Home Alliance. Michelle, thank you for sitting down for a conversation with me today. I'm Justin Robbins, founder and principal analyst at Metric Sherpa, and I look forward to all of you joining us again on the Contact Center Show. Have a great day.